Republicans are already gearing up for a battle with Joe Biden over his proposal to partly repeal Donald Trump's tax cuts for the rich. Now, I say partly repeal because it appears that Joe Biden is not targeting the 2017 tax law in its entirety, but he certainly does want to repeal certain tax cuts that benefit the highest earners. For instance, Biden has called for rolling back the Trump tax cuts on people making above $400,000 a year and to partially reverse the reduction in the corporate tax rate. If you guys can recall, Trump had cut that from 35% to 21%. And then when you consider the effective tax rate with all the deductions, they pay far less than that. And even though Biden has indicated tax increases are not his most immediate priority, he has noted that they could be a way to finance his spending priorities down the line. Now, already you have Republican lawmakers raising their hands and saying that this is absolutely unacceptable, including Representative Kevin Brady, a Republican who says that's going to have a significant impact in a bad way on our economy. And he further elaborated on this point in the next video. Let's watch.
I assume he's going to follow through on his pledge to repeal the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, raise those business taxes, and of course, obviously that's going to have a significant impact in a bad way on our economy.
There is some scuttlebutt that maybe it's only a partial rollback of some provisions of that 2017 law. Does that mean that there's room for a compromise with Republicans? What would Republicans want to agree to the rollback of some of the tax cuts?
Well, I will tell you, just making those tax cuts permanent for families, small businesses, and companies will create another 1.5 million jobs. 10 countries have already lowered their corporate tax rates since we did. So if the president thinks the rest of the world is sitting around while we tried to become competitive, they aren't. And I think it's a major mistake to raise those rates either at the local level on small businesses, on corporations. I think discouraging investment in technology and production through raising cap gains and others. I think, again, economically, this would be controversial in good economic times. It makes no sense trying to recover from this pandemic.
So Aida, I want to bring you in and get your thoughts on what Representative Brady has to say there. He's arguing that the pandemic has hurt these businesses, and so raising taxes on the wealthy is actually a terrible idea.
So first of all, did he say scuttlebutt? Did he say? I wanted to know. What yes. To right. You know what? I'm so tired of people who make money off the people justifying continuing making money off the people, right? That the people who are defending these corporations that talk about the rest of the world doesn't look like us right now. And I just think that, we have to take into consideration the specificity of what it is to be in America with a presidency and an administration that overlooked a pandemic that overwhelmed this country so much financially, the economics of this, while these corporations made so much money. Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos have been going back and forth, competing for who the richest man in the world is, and they're American. And so when we talk about that, these tone deaf conversations from these people who are also getting paid by corporations to continuously lobby for them. This talk fake capitalism, patriotism that Americans are always pushing out to the people, the aspirational stuff that you too can be a billionaire when chances are that you probably won't. I'm tired of the rhetoric. It needs to just go away. All of it needs to go away because the people are suffering right now, and those that are making the most money and are thriving in this moment and have been thriving should pay more in taxes. They should participate in helping the American people do better and recover from all of the stuff that's been happening forever in this country.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And if you're worried about companies, maybe relying more on foreign labor in order to cut costs, then if it's a US based company that's exploiting cheap labor abroad, then why don't you think about various tariffs or various taxes you can use to discourage them from using that kind of labor? But instead, what they want to do is put out these incredibly hollow arguments in favor of maintaining these tax cuts for the rich. Remember, when you really think about who was impacted negatively during this pandemic, and I'm talking about economically, it was not the wealthiest people in the country. It was not multinational corporations. They were already bailed out by either the Federal Reserve or through the CARES Act and other stimulus that was passed following that. And so again, when you look at it, there's been an asymmetric recovery, economic recovery that has largely benefited people who had already gotten these massive tax cuts by Trump. And when we want to focus on real recovery right now, we need to focus on ordinary workers, ordinary Americans, wage earners, people who have not gotten enough relief yet. So to make this argument that, hey, these wealthy people, they've really been hurt by this pandemic, and so we don't want to raise their taxes now, is an absolutely ridiculous argument to say the least. Most people in this, in this income bracket are either able to continue working from home or make such a tremendous amount of money that this argument of going back to what taxes were before Trump, which by the way, were already pretty low. It's not going to negatively impact these companies. It's just, again, a hollow argument. Before we go to the next video though, Aida, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that I'm tired of these talking points about these multi-million, billion-dollar corporations having to make these concessions so that they can survive by making, they are who they are because they've exploited people, because they get the cheapest labor, because they exploit the people. That is how they have been able to reach the heights that they've reached. So this whole thing is like, oh, we're gonna have to resort to going out of the country to get our labor. They have money, they have a lot of money. And Americans are always deluded into believing that, oh, the poor companies are struggling and they have to outsource the labor. They are, the reason they do that is because that's how they get super rich. They get the most that they can get for the less amount of money that they have to pay. And it is always at the expense of the people. Stop feeling sorry for them.
So Kevin Brady spoke a little more about why it's such a bad idea to raise both the corporate tax rate and the tax rate for the highest earners. Let me just note though, it's important to know the numbers regarding the corporate tax rate. As I mentioned earlier, prior to the Trump tax cuts for corporations, the percentage was 35%. He lowered it to 21%. Biden isn't even calling for the corporate tax rate to go back up to 35%. He's calling for it to go to 28%. So it's this middle ground between what the corporate taxes were before and what Trump turned them into, which is incredibly low when you consider the effective corporate tax rate with all the deductions included. Now, with that clarification, let's go to Representative Kevin Brady again.
What do we got? Well, it's not over in Georgia. Senate races went to a runoff. What are we up against?
You'll never believe this.
Far-left activists are attempting to gain full and total control of the US government. Senator Perdue and Senator Loeffler. They must win.
What's our situation on the ground? We have two patriots down there, Senator Loeffler and Senator Perdue. Great fighters with a great message.
They just need a little backup.
Last question, who do you want to bring?
Bring everyone.
We can't take someone seriously if they've been in that commercial. Like, that's just, who are you gonna trust?
Scuttlebutt. That's a scuttlebutt right there. What kind of scuttlebutt is it? Sorry.
Oh my God. Who says scuttlebutt? And also, who agrees in being in that incredibly cheesy advertisement? But anyway, just a few more points because we've been picking on Representative Brady for good reason. But there are other lawmakers that are worth mentioning. Senator Mike Crapo who, of course, I'm always tempted to, mispronounce, argued that Biden's proposal to raise the corporate rate would hit already vulnerable businesses and put the United States companies once again at a strong competitive disadvantage with the rest of the world. So again, it's more and more of the same arguments. Chuck Grassley had a similar argument. I think it would be a big mistake to raise taxes on individuals and businesses as they struggle through an economic recovery and a pandemic. Again, we're talking about earners who bring in more than $400,000 a year. Those are the individuals we're talking about. And when it comes to the corporate tax rate, again, Biden wouldn't even increase the corporate tax rate to what it was before the Trump administration passed their tax cuts. He would just increase it from 21% to 28%. Again, when you look at how major corporations have performed in this pandemic, they're doing fine, guys. They're doing fine. They've gotten all sorts of stimulus. They've gotten all sorts of help. They've gotten bailouts from the Federal Reserve. It's about time that they pay their fair share in taxes.
Yeah. And they've become who they are because of the people who go work for them and don't make a living wage. They are the ones who've been abusing people during this pandemic. Some of where people can't even go to the bathroom and take a bathroom break. These are the people that are making a lot of money, and we need to stop with this. These talking points and keep pushing this narrative that these are the American people. These are the corporations that are making laws that are affecting us every day. They are affecting our government, which is why it's so corrupt to the core at this moment. And we do not need to be defending these corporations or people that make $400,000. And I hope to make $400,000 a year so that I can pay my fair share of taxes. If that's gonna make somebody's life better, especially somebody who comes from where I come from.
I mean, you're making $400,000. Let's say your, effective tax rate is 50% with state taxes included. Like, you're bringing in $200,000 clean every year. Like, why are people complaining? Just pay your tax. And then, by the way, they're not even gonna pay that much. Like, all the deductions are still there. No one pays 50% effective tax rate. It just doesn't work out that way. There's all sorts of loopholes and things that people take advantage of. But what I'm saying is, even if 50% of that goes toward taxes, you're still bringing in a good amount of money. And they're acting as if like, how are people gonna survive? How are they gonna survive with the tax rate that they were paying prior to Trump? And it infuriates me, especially when you hear statements about how they can't pass economic relief bills because they're so costly. But they don't consider the tax cuts for the rich costly. They cost this country $2 trillion over the next decade.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.